Hey, Ryan. Good. First, yes, you are first. Okay. Yeah, I was waiting for someone to join to actually start doing the thing because I didn't want anybody to miss out. So I've got. Can you hear me? Okay. Is my my audio good? Yeah. Yeah, you can hear me? Alright, sweet. Okay, so I've got my original story here, but I also have the Five Nights at Freddy's book, the sequels to the Fazbear's Frights called Tales from the Pizzaplex. And I started reading the first one, it's pretty good, so I mean, I don't really have a background, and I don't really know how to, like, digitally set one up. So, I mean, so yeah, it's what we're gonna have to do until I figure something out. I'm not great at this. The only thing I like somewhat managed to figure out how to do was the gaming streams, so I'm kind of at a bit of a loss here. But yeah, so which yeah, but I don't know. I don't really think that people would appreciate having to look at my face for that amount of time, if I'm honest. I also have, like, a Roll Slang with Roman story that I wrote a while back that I think is pretty good that I could also do. But it's like whatever you want to hear, I'm all good with, honestly. Because that's like the three things that I've got for this. I'm so glad you're the only one here right now. So yeah, I forgot those. Okay. So my writing isn't great. So I'm thinking maybe I'll flip a coin. I'll flip a coin between those two. Just a second here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this is taking so long. I suck at this. Hang on. Do I have a coin? I might not have a coin. No. Oh, I forgot. I'm broke. I'm so sorry. I don't know why. Why do I do this to my friends? That's gonna be what we never stream. Well, I know you wouldn't like do that, but like I don't know. I doubt you'd even think it, but I just I hate it. I hate it. God, am I gonna have to like fucking? Alright, we'll do it this way. Close that too. Close that. Okay, so we're going with my story then. Sweet. Okay. Alright. Okay, so this is the first draft of this story that I've been writing. And the VOD viewers are gonna hate my guts. So this is the first draft. And in the words of Ernest Hemingway, the first draft of everything is shit. So please excuse the continuity errors and yay, regenerating. Okay. So what was I doing? Yeah, Ernest Hemingway, first draft of everything is shit. I apologize for the bad writing. Right, I'm just gonna get into this. The Lost and the Glitched. Chapter 1. Finding a decent stretch of flat land was proving difficult for Jaden in July. Jaden finished filling out the south section of her map as she reached the end of the desert. She looked around, then sighed. She set the map down in the sand and placed the stone on top of it to keep it from blowing away. The only thing I can complain about with this update, she grumbled, trying to dump all the sand out of her boots, is that all there is are mountains, forests, deserts, and water. She surveyed the land again. Sure enough, she saw mountains behind her, a forest to her right, and a river in front of it to the left of her. She noticed the sky was starting to darken, and when she looked up, she saw the sun sinking into the mountains. "Ooh, that's not good," said a voice from behind her. She turned to see July staring at the descending sun. "Where did you come from?" she asked, sure that he hadn't been near her a few moments ago. July shrugged. "After I lost track of where you were, I just wandered a bit." He held up a bundle of string. "Found a desert temple, though." Jaden took 2 pieces of iron and pressed them together to make shears. "Sweet. Now we can make beds if we survive long enough to get back to the plains. I told you we should have just made them before we left. Although I guess it would be cooler to just kill the sheep." "Well, I wasn't the one who broke our last pair of shears getting leaves," July said jokingly. Jaden rolled her eyes. She saw a plateau across the... Wait, I dropped a page. Fuck. She saw a plateau across the small river ahead of them. She then looked back towards the mountains to see the vibrant pink and orange glow that marked the sunset. She stood decisively, folded up the map, and started out over the water. "All right," she turned to address July, who was in the process of putting a carved pumpkin on top of 2 sand blocks in an attempt to replicate a snow golem. If we can make it over to that stretch of land, I think there's enough flat land to build a decent base." July nodded. I think we should hurry up with that. I can already see monsters coming down the mountain." "The only problem," Jaden paused, struggling to keep a giant spider off of her while unsheathing her axe, "is that at the moment, the river is full of drowned." "I think we'll be fine," July countered, pulling a kelp-covered trident out of his shield. Across the water, Jaden could faintly see the outline of a group of sheep on the hillside. "There! If we can get over that hill, we can make beds." July backed towards her as he fought off a small group of monsters. He looked over to where she was pointing. "Looks like a plains biome, too. There's gotta be flat land there," he said, carefully circling Jaden in order to keep the onslaught of monsters away from her. She rolled up the map and turned back to July. "I'll get rid of the mobs. You go scope out a nice place for us to build. Sound good?" July nodded and made a beeline for the river. Jaden took out a stack of blocks and began to tower up. As she went higher, monsters began to gather at the base of the pillar. From the top, she saw July make it across the river safely and sighed in relief. The monsters seemed to ignore him for the most part, too distracted by Jaden to notice him. Jaden stopped building and waited for the mobs to accumulate beneath her. After a while, she dug into her bag to find 8 bundles of TNT, which she placed in a square around the top of her pillar. She waited a bit longer, and once satisfied with the amount of mobs beneath her, she lit each block and let them fall into the crowd beneath her. She curled up on top of the tower and waited for the TNT to do its work. She heard 8 distinct explosions and peeked out over the edge of the block she was on. At the base of the makeshift tower was a large crater filled with rotten flesh, bones, arrows, gunpowder, spider eyes, and a single bow. She jumped off the tower and into the river. The water was very cool and refreshing after the scorching heat of the desert. She took a few seconds to let the water seep into her hair and clothes. She felt small patches of grass on the bottom grasp at her legs as the slow current ruffled her hair. She would spend plenty of time underwater, gathering blocks or kelp to experiment on a build. But because of the drown, she was never able to truly enjoy it. July's voice snapped her out of her peaceful drifting, and she began to swim to the surface. Once she came up, she took several deep gulps of air to seem like she hadn't hidden from July on purpose. He ran over to her with a relieved look on his face. He grabbed her arms and hoisted her out of the water gently. "You alright?" he asked, brushing the wet hair out of her face. "You had me worried." She nodded and wringed all the water out of her clothes. Once she dried off, July took her to a small cave that he had dug out close by. Inside were 2 beds, separated by a furnace and a crafting table. One bed was dyed light blue to match Jaden's hair and clothing, and the other was dyed lime green to match July's. Jaden had been born with the light blue eyes and hair, and July had been born with green eyes, but he had dyed his hair to match Jaden's after he had seen that she was insecure about it. Since she had met him, Jaden regarded July as the only person who was able to make her happy. Except for... Jaden told herself not to think about her. She laid down in her bed and July in his. They both stored their items in a chest that July placed down between them. Jaden turned over onto her side. "Night, Jelly," she said, smiling. "Night, Blue Jay," July replied, yawning. They both fell asleep peacefully as the monsters outside shambled past their cave. I should have prefaced this by saying that they are not in a relationship yet. That's complicated. Did she say anything? I didn't see if she said anything. So that's like the end of day 1. Like the chapter. Yeah, is it good? I don't know. I should have prefaced this by saying, this is, it's like based in the Minecraft universe. Yeah. It's like based in the Minecraft universe, but like I added like a lot of like world building stuff and lore, so it's like, it's not like the Minecraft part isn't like the central thing. That's just sort of like the world that I had it in. So yeah. So yeah, I do use like a lot of the blocks and like the terminology and stuff, but other than that, it's like completely original story. I've been working on this for 4 years, maybe 5 now. Nah, 4. Yeah, so far so good. 4 years, first draft. Gotta write more of this because I haven't been doing it. Alright. See, that's the end of morning 1, which I definitely should have ended the chapter on, but the chapters are kind of disproportionate, but it's fine. Anyway. Also, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. The next morning, Jaden woke up early to get ready to start building. She had to wait for the mobs to clear out, but once they did, she had the entire valley to herself. She started building with oak fences and slabs, making elevated stair-like platforms as a sort of border for where she wanted to build. She made a larger platform between the 2 lowest platforms connecting them. She finished the border by connecting the 2 highest platforms using a large L-shaped platform with oak planks. She connected the top and bottom platforms using a wall of spruce planks. She put oak logs in the corners of the top platform to make supports and used more planks to form the walls. She left the outer corner of the top platform open to make a viewing deck, from which she had discovered a village and a ruined nether portal. She took a break to mark these down on her map, then got back to building. One side of the hallway-esque room, she made a bed into a bedroom, and she made the other into their storage room. She turned the platforms into small farms and planted 3 crops of wheat and 3 crops of carrots, then made 2 separate staircases, each leading to a different end of the top platform. She made a small table and chairs on the bottom platform, and a few small pens for future animals to live in. She made a staircase of slabs leading from the bottom platform to the ground, and placed leaves and a fence around the bottom gap of the house, the underside of the house. She planted flowers beneath the house and put sea lanterns along the ground to light the space. She covered the lamps with moss to make it feel more natural, then stepped back to admire her work. July came out of the cave, yawning, and looked at the newly built house. Impressive as always, Blue Jay, he smiled. Jaden smiled back at him. Found a village in a portal, she stated. I found a village in a portal, she stated, going down to get the beds. We'll have to go renovate those once we finish settling in. July nodded and went to put the chest and crafting table in the storage room. While he was there, he decided to put in some scaffolding to act as shelves, as well as actual bookshelves to fill up the space. He also added a blast furnace, smoker, and a few plants to decorate. He then went outside and used trapdoors to cover the water by the crops so that they would be easier to access. Good thinking, Jaden called from the other side of the house, bringing the beds and a chest to the bedroom. July replaced the spruce wall with one of oak logs and planks. Yeah, Jaden came out and looked at it. She tilted her head. Actually, that does look better. And with that, I think we're done, July stated proudly. Jaden nodded. You can go set up your note blocks in the front yard. July shook his head and shoved his hands into his pockets. I need some pretty rare blocks to be able to make the right sounds. What do you need? Jaden asked, taking out a quill and a piece of paper. I really just need an emerald block, a gold block, and a bone block, July replied, thinking. And maybe some redstone to make a few extra note blocks. He saw her writing down what he had said. You don't have to get it for me, he muttered, looking away shamefully. She folded up the paper and put it in her bag. It's not a big deal. I'll get you the stuff you need. You start fixing up that portal. And when I get back, we'll renovate the village together. July nodded and went into the house to grab obsidian and stone to fix the portal. When he went back outside, Jaden had already left. He started to walk towards the village, then went just a bit to the right. The portal stood tall outside the village. The stone brick frame surrounding it was cracked and broken, as was the obsidian that made up the portal. 2 of the obsidian blocks slowly dropped a thick purple liquid. The netherrack around the base of the portal was littered with blocks of lava and magma. July went over the steps to repair it out loud to remember them. Okay, fix and terraform the netherrack, mine out the crying obsidian, fill in the rest of the nether portal, and fix the frame with... He thought for a bit. Stone bricks, chisel stone bricks, iron bars, stone brick slabs, stone brick stairs, and gold blocks. He went through his inventory as he listed the items that he needed. Drat, I still need gold, he muttered. Oh well, it's not mandatory anyway. He started to replace the netherrack when he noticed a chest at the base of the portal. He opened it curiously and found golden armor. Garbage, he mumbled, tossing it into a nearby block of lava, and a flint and steel. At least it's something, he shrugged. He fixed the portal frame, and by the time he finally lit it, the sun was starting to set again. He decided to sleep in the village. After making sure that they had an iron golem, he went into one of the vacant houses and laid down in a bed. He started to dream as he fell asleep. So, I do have to preface this next part by saying that July July and Jaden have been traveling together for a very long time. And like they're like really close, but not quite in a relationship. But I feel like I should probably preface that July does kind of have a crush on her, which makes things like it's good for story purposes, but I feel like perhaps I should like just say that to okay, listen, did I make it that obvious? Like, did it? I didn't think it was that obvious, but I mean, like, and if it was, then I mean, I guess that works. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, just make sure you know, like, don't want to make you, like, uncomfortable. Like, yeah. Is it like Gator where you can, like, figure out, like, how, never mind, I'm just being stupid. But it doesn't get brought up too much, but this next part is, like, a little bit more than usual. So it's like, alright. It is? Great. Okay. So yeah, again, it doesn't get brought up too much, like barely ever and what I've written so far. But yeah, just wanted to say. Okay. He was in the mangrove with Jaden, watching the frogs jump around like springs. He smiled and looked over at her. The sun's rays leaped through the mangrove leaves and bathed her in their warm glow. Her deep blue eyes glimmered with delight, and she looked back up at July. She carefully stepped over the roots towards him. She sat beside him and leaned up against the roots gently. He smiled softly and grabbed her hand. He sighed contentedly and closed his eyes. That's the end of that. Suddenly, he felt something start to wrap around his legs tightly. He looked down to see vines snaking up his body, binding his legs, tangling his arms, trapping him in a slimy green web. He tried to struggle against them, to loosen them, to move them at all, but the mangrove roots held him down firmly. He looked over to Jaden pleadingly for help, but she was nowhere to be seen. He felt himself start to wake up, but he could tell that something was wrong. For one thing, he found that what was binding him wasn't vines, but ropes. He looked around frantically and saw that he was in a dimly lit cave, bound and gagged. He heard frightened hums and hums around him. He looked up to see a silhouetted figure standing over him, with glowing red eyes and sharp, pointed teeth twisted into a smile. And that's the end of chapter 1. God, it took me 23 minutes to get through chapter 1. What am I doing? I don't think chapter 2 is as long. What do you think so far? Good? I don't know if it's good. I don't think it's good. You might be bad. Thank you. I've been working. I've been. Yay! Yeah, that was the first try. That was the first time I actually tried to. I've actually read this out loud, so I'm trying to like figure out where all the voices are and like the sound effects and stuff. Cause like again, I'm trying to like get into voice acting. I know, but like I can't help it. Like I don't know. Like if you wrote a if you wrote a book, it would be amazing. But like I'm writing a book. So I don't know how to like explain it. This is it's like my own writing gives me the ick. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if I brought a guy home and he read my book, he'd just be like, I'm not sure about this. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Anyway, chapter 2! Again, the chapters are super disproportionate, so I don't think this one is as long. So yeah, this is cutting back to Jaden. Yes, I do. I think it'd be amazing. Like, no matter what it was about. You could write a... I should write a story about chat, just as a community. No. Talking to the best streamer ever. For Gint. I forgore. What time is it? Yeah. Damn, 25 minutes for one chapter. Alright. 8:58. Okay, I've got 2 hours left, so it shouldn't be too bad. Alright. Any questions after that first chapter? Anything like lore-wise so far that you want me to clear up? Yeah, FNF was like way more popular than people say it is. Nope, no questions. Awesome, sweet, okay. Okay. Chapter 2. Jaden started to head back to the village as the sun began to rise. She had spent most of the night underground, getting emeralds engulfed for July's note blocks, and walking on the tops of the trees to avoid mobs. She got back to the house and started looking for July. After looking inside and around their house thoroughly, she went to the village, assuming that July had slept there after finishing the portal. When she got to the village, she saw that the villagers seemed unusually panicked, and the iron golem was moving slowly and looked like it was almost broken. Oh, you poor thing. She took out 3 pieces of iron and pressed them into the cracks in the golem, fixing it bit by bit. It nodded at her thankfully and walked away to continue patrolling the village. She looked around at the frightened villagers, trying to find one that was calm enough to talk to. Eventually, she scoped out the purple robe that marked the village cleric. She walked over to her and started speaking to her in the few hums and hums that she knew of the villagers' language. She wasn't very fluent in the language, but she managed to ask if July had been through. From the cleric's response, she managed to pick up that a monster, as the cleric put it, came through the village every night and took villagers into its cave, and that some of the villagers saw it taken the night before. Jaden's heart sank. She thought about what might have happened to July and started to panic. The cleric pointed in the direction that July had been taken, and Jaden quickly ran in that direction. Her worry turned to ferocity as she ran, and she closed her eyes briefly to clear her mind. A sharp pain shot through her body as she collided with a man who had walked out from around a corner. They both fell to the ground. Jaden's wrist made a loud pop, and a wave of pain ran up her arm. She rolled off the man and clutched her wrist, gritting her teeth and tensing. Ow! What's the big idea? The man shouted, wincing and sitting up, his flaming red hair full of grass and twigs. Sorry, Jaden muttered, also sitting up. She looked up into the man's glowing red eyes. She stood and started to heal her wrist. While I'm here, would you happen to know anything about the villagers disappearing from the nearby town? She asked, still worried about July. The man's eyes flashed, but he looked away. I don't. Even if I did, I wouldn't tell some reckless vigilante like you. Jaden looked up at him, offended. I'm just looking for my friend. You might have seen him. Green hair and eyes, darker green clothes. The man's eyes flashed again. I don't know who you're talking about, he said, turning and walking away. Jaden finished healing her wrist. She looked at the man suspiciously as he walked away. She decided to follow him and crept behind him, ducking behind trees and corners as she went. The man got to a large cave and looked around. He went into the cave and Jaden followed him, staying outside and cautiously looking in. She saw July tied up on the ground, and her anger started to burn inside her like a river of lava. She tried to calm herself down and stayed outside, listening and waiting for an opportunity to save July. The man bent down and took the cloth off from around July's mouth, revealing his full, albeit nervous, smile. Something that Jaden had always thought was weird about July was his constant and often misplaced optimism. Even in a life-or-death situation, Jaden never saw him without a smile. She often questioned how he could be so positive in bad or dangerous situations, and this was one of those times. Wipe that stupid grin off your face before I do it for you, the other man snarled. July's smile faltered, but stayed stubbornly in place. Now, Josh, I know you must be upset with me, July began nervously. Oh, you think? Josh picked him up by the front of his shirt and slammed him against the cold stone wall. Jaden's blood boiled as she crept towards them, staying hidden in the shadows. Do you have any idea what you put me through? No, I can't say I do, July responded, furrowing his brow. His smile, of course, made it seem as though he was trying to be wise. Josh dropped him in disgust. July winced as he fell to the floor. He wriggled a bit to try to loosen the ropes, but they stayed tight around him. Josh walked over to the other wall and sat down, facing July. He watched him struggle for a few minutes, then smirked. I must admit, it's nice to see you care about staying alive for once. July stopped struggling and looked up at him, his smile faltering again. I see why. Met your girlfriend earlier today. July blushed and looked away. She's not my girlfriend, Josh scoffed. Sure. The sun began to set, and Josh looked at it, thinking. You know, he started, turning back to July and standing. It's your fault that I can't have anything like that. I'm still not entirely sure what I did to you, July said, starting to squirm again. Josh started to walk towards him. As the sun continued to set and darkness filled the cave, Josh's skin turned to a sick shade of green, and his teeth sharpened to a point. His eyes began to glow red, and he knelt in front of July, staring daggers at him. July's eyes widened and he backed away from Josh as much as he could. I could have sworn I cured that, he chuckled nervously. Josh growled. Yeah, I thought so too. But it turns out you can't brew a potion to literally save your life, he snarled, baring his teeth. I lost my place. Jaden continued to slowly move closer. She stopped and drew her sword. July pressed himself up against the wall as much as he could. Come on, you wouldn't really eat me, would ya, buddy? His smile faltered again. Josh thought for a minute. You know, I wasn't planning on it, but now that you say it. He grabbed July's arms, digging his nails into his back. July closed his eyes and tensed. Suddenly, Jaden sprung out of the shadows and tackled Josh to the ground. He froze instinctually, and she pinned him down and held her sword to his throat. He snapped out of it and tried to scratch her, but he was already immobilized. Jaden took a chain out of her bag with her free hand and bound him tightly. He struggled violently, but wasn't able to get out of it. She put a piece of leather over his mouth and secured it, then bound him to the wall and stepped back. He continued to thrash around to no avail. Jaden hurriedly went to July and began to untie him. Are you alright? Are you hurt? I'm alright, Blue Jay. July's smile softened, and as soon as Jaden untied... Sorry, I thought someone called me. And as soon as Jaden untied him, he hugged her tightly. Josh continued to growl and struggle in the corner. Jaden drew her sword and stood to go towards him. July pulled her back down gently. Calm down, Blue Jay. There's no need to get violent. He took her sword and put it to the side. But he... it's okay. I understand why he's upset with me. He threatened to eat you. What's a little death threat between old friends? He looked up and smiled at Josh. Right, bud? Josh snarled at him. July looked back at Jaden. See? Jaden finally calmed down and let herself relax. She started to feel the chill of the night and shivered. July gave her his sweater. He stood and pulled her up gently as he turned to Josh. I know you're pretty mad at me right now, but if you calm down a bit, you'll be welcome to stay with us. I'd be happy to try to help you out with your condition again. Josh growled and glared at him and bit down on the leather strip around his mouth. July's smile turned sad as he turned to bring Jaden back to their house. And that's chapter 2. I had to revise a little bit at the end there, but yeah. So now we've met Josh. He's kind of a jerk, but you know, you gotta have that character sometimes. I have the lore. I have 8 main characters in total. 8 protagonists and 4 antagonists. But I haven't gotten around to writing more than 4 of the protagonists yet. So we'll see what that gets us. Also, yes, this is the story that I had with 3 of 8, yeah. And they're all gonna have to live in that same house, which I've been trying to remedy that, and I've been trying to like get around to like building them different houses. But okay, again, I started working on this story 4 years ago, so I didn't know you. However, I think something can be done about this. See, I'm canon in their universe. I can easily make you canon in their universe. But, like, I'm God to them. So what would that make you? Yeah. See that's the conundrum I'm having here. Fair enough. You know, fair cop out, but fair enough. I could probably make you a lovable side character. Like not, yes you are. Come on. You're so above me in every way. What are you talking about? Yeah, you want to be lovable side character. Awesome. Like Noise, how he only got 4 episodes, but he's the fandom's favorite character. Cameos from the Sandersides universe. So anyway, let's see. What time is it? It's time for lunch. What time is it? It's time. 9:10. Not bad. All right. You are. Name one way you're not above me. Aside from the writing thing, because that's it's not obvious. You could probably write better than me, but like, gotta do this real quick. Come on, Doc. Load. You can't. How many pages of this shit have we written? Okay. Okay. Whatever you say, man. All right. Chapter 3. Don't be mad. Don't be mad at me, please. Okay. Is there anything... Wait, did you have any questions about Chapter 2 and, like, lore-wise stuff? Yay, happy. No? No questions? Okay. No, there's the whole, like, Josh thing, but that, like... Yeah. That's... Well, no, July didn't... And no, it's not... Yeah, I know it sounds like July, but it's Jellai. Jelly, like jelly, but with AI. But I get how that can be confusing. Yeah, no, you're all good. You're all good. Like I said, common mistake. July didn't turn Josh into a zombie. Josh was turned into a zombie back when they were still friends. And July tried to cure him, but completely botched it. And he didn't know that he botched it because he left soon after. And yeah, it is crazy. Like July's backstory. Yeah, July's backstory is somehow the most fleshed out of all of these characters, except for maybe Jordan, whom you haven't met yet. Anyway, so if that's all. Chapter 3. An arrow whizzed over July's head as he ran across the uneven landscape. Yeah, fair enough. He held Jaden to his chest tightly while trying to keep a tight grip on his shield and axe. Wait. No, hang on. He held Jaden's arm tightly while trying to keep a tight grip on his shield and axe. He held his shield up sideways, protecting Jaden but leaving himself vulnerable. He hissed through his teeth as an arrow lodged itself in his shoulder. He dropped his axe and swore quietly, going to pick it up, but bailing when a spider managed to bite Jaden. He turned and continued running, clumsily trying to bandage the bite. He felt a shield start to break as they backed into a wall of stone. Again, I have to like edit this a bit, so I'm like kind of editing as I'm going through. I don't think we're making it home tonight, Blue Jay, he muttered. The monster started to close in, and July started digging up the dirt underneath him, making a big enough hole for both him and Jaden to fit in. He put a block of dirt above their heads and made sure that the mobs couldn't get in before lighting up the space with a torch. He sighed with relief and... Sorry for the cramped conditions, Blue Jay. I kind of panicked. Jaden laid back down, and Jaden leaned against the wall, and July closed his eyes and started to hum. Jaden listened to the melody and started to relax again. I had to edit out a whole paragraph there. God, I shouldn't have done this with the first draft. They heard a creeper explode outside of their hiding place. Jaden sat up and drew her axe instinctively, nearly hitting July with it in the cramped conditions. She quickly apologized before quieting down to listen. The block above them began to break. Jaden switched out her axe for a bow and aimed it up cautiously. As soon as the block disappeared, Jaden fired an arrow. Josh managed to just barely dodge the arrow, and it lodged itself in the stone wall behind him. July stood and pulled himself out of the hole, then helped Jaden get out. They both looked around to see a perfectly clear landscape, aside from a small crater made from the creeper explosion. Josh stood and brushed himself off. Trigger happy much? He scowled. Well, excuse me for trying to keep myself safe, Jaden snapped back. July put his arm around her and turned to Josh gratefully. Glad to see you've had a change of heart. Yeah, don't make a big deal out of it. Jaden glared at Josh, suspicious of him. July patted her on the back comfortingly. She pushed him off gently and drew her axe again, looking around. Calm down, I took care of it. They won't spawn near us, Josh said nonchalantly. He stretched and yawned. So, we're going back to your place? He asked, looking around as well. From who, Josh or Jaden? Jaden brandished his axe at him. Who said you were staying with us? July did. He shrugged. Jaden looked over at July, exasperated. Josh. Yeah, okay, fair. But no, Josh is arrow ace, canonically. July did. He shrugged. Jaden looked over at July, exasperated. July shrugged as well. It'll be fun. A nice bonding experience. He put his arm around Josh, who immediately snarled at him. Well, actually, yes, I would. I got for the realism, man. He put his arm around Josh, who immediately snarled at him. Don't touch me, slime boy. July put his hands up and backed off. Jaden kept her axe out and took a step towards Josh threateningly. Call him that again. I dare you, she snarled. Josh took out his sword. Try me. He bared his teeth. They got inches within each other's face before July grabbed them both by the backs of their shirts and pulled them away from one another. Now, guys, let's not get violent. This could be good for us. It could give us some time to get to know more about each other and our pasts and help us with any problems we might have. Jaden crossed her arms. Fine. If that's how we're going to do this, then I have someone I need to see as well. The sun slowly started to come up, and Josh turned back into his human form. Of course. Anything you want, Blue Jay. July hugged her gently. She pushed him off again and flattened her skirt. There's only one tiny problem, she muttered, looking away. Josh raised his eyebrow and crossed his arms. Jaden looked back up at the two boys. She lives in the end. July's smile faltered and Josh's eyes widened. You want us to go to the end? Josh questioned her, looking at her as though she was crazy. You two don't have to come. I can get her out by myself, Jaden said stubbornly. July thought for a bit, then shook Jaden's hand. I'll help you, he stated confidently. Jaden's expression softened and she smiled and hugged him. Thank you, she muttered, closing her eyes. July closed his eyes as well. Josh scoffed and rolled his eyes. Fine, I'll go too. At least I won't have to third wheel alone.
Jaden and July pushed each other off again. Plot twist.
What plot twist? Oh, yeah, she
In the end, right.
Oh, I put two voices at once. How am I supposed to do this? We're not together! They both exclaimed in unison. I can't do two voices at once, I'm sorry. Josh rolled his eyes and started to walk back
towards the house. Jaden and July started to walk back as well. He looked at her, slightly concerned. So, not that I, mind or anything, but how come you
never told me about this friend of yours? You usually tell me everything,
he asked.
She was an old flame of mine, Jaden shrugged simply. Didn't think it was important. She slowed down a bit. I loved her to bits, but I had to abandon her because I didn't want to drag her into my situation. She wrapped her arms around herself. She must hate me now. She started to tremble slightly, and July put his arm around her comfortingly. I'm sure she still likes you, Blue Jay. Once you explain everything to her, she'll come around, he said reassuringly. Jane looked up at him. You really think so? She asked, loosening up slightly. July's expression softened. Of course you will, he said kindly. He felt slightly jealous when he heard how much she cared for this girl he had never met, but he didn't show his worries, however. We weren't together for very long. We tried to have a relationship, but she realized we were better off as friends, she clarified. July cheered up slightly. All the more reason for her to be able to forgive you. He saw their house as the sun started to rise. Josh went ahead of them and cleared out the creepers and spiders left over around the property. Jaden turned back to July. I got all the stuff for your note blocks, she said, handing him a bag. He clasped his hands happily. Thank you! He took the bag and looked through it. Once he checked that it contained everything he needed, he put it in his pocket, hugged Jaden, and raced back to the house to start building his music room. He dug under the house and started to dig out a basement while Jaden went to bake breakfast. She went to the storage room to get milk and eggs and ran into Josh, putting away the few things he had and settling in. She got her materials while side-eyeing him. So, she started, still suspicious of him. Where do you plan on sleeping? Well, I figure the only place in this house to sleep is you guys' room. It's large enough for 8 people, Josh shrugged. Jaden glared at him but hid it. I don't think I trust you enough to stay in there with us, she stated plainly. Josh shrugged again. I get that a lot. Jaden took everything downstairs and started to set the table. She heard the unmistakable clinks and dings of the note blocks underneath the floorboards and smiled softly. Once she finished setting out the food, she went down to the newly built basement and walked in to find July tuning all of his blocks. All of the walls and floors were made of stone. The ceiling was dirt, and the space was lit by 2 torches hanging on either side of the room. Jaden tutted and smiled. This is why you don't do interior design, Jelly, she joked. July looked up and laughed softly. I think that the nicknames are part of the reason that Josh thinks we're together, he said, putting carpet over the blocks to silence them. Jaden nodded and her smile faded. Are you sure we can trust him? She looked away and started to replace the stone with polished diorite and granite. I know he seems real brash, but it's only fair to give him a chance, July said, putting away the remaining blocks. I know Josh. He hates being alone. I'm willing to bet that's the reason why he's here in the first place. Jaden nodded but continued to look away. Then it's only fair that we go to save Jordan, she muttered. Exactly, July said cheerily. Jaden looked up at him and smiled softly. Thank you again for agreeing to help me with this. It means a lot to me. July hugged her gently. Of course, Blue Jay. He let her go, patted her on the shoulder, and went up the stairs. Jaden turned and hesitantly went up after him. She joined Josh and July at the table. Josh had already finished and was staring off into the distance, thinking. Jaden sat next to July, who was scarfing down his eggs, eager to get back to his music. He swallowed and took his plate to a cauldron a few blocks away from the table to wash it. Thank you, Jaden, he said quickly. He then rushed back down to the basement. Jaden smiled and started to eat. She looked up at Josh warily. Something I've been meaning to ask you. What did you do with all the villagers that you took? I set them free, he muttered, not looking up from his plate. Jaden tensed and stood, taking her plate to the makeshift sink. I see. Josh sighed and... Hello, who else is here? Josh sighed and put his plate away as well. Hello, Ferox. Just doing a bit of reading. You missed chapters 1 and 2. So, quick synopsis. Story starts off with Jaden and July, who are looking for a place to stay. They stay out at night the first night and fight a bunch of monsters. Once that all clears out, they build a base for themselves and get settled in there. They see a village and July goes to investigate it, and then he gets captured by another man named Josh, who has this condition where at night he turns into like a sort of like stronger, like faster, sort of like zombie-ish kind of thing. And so he's mad at July for abandoning him and messing up his life. And then Jaden sets July free. They both go back to their house, and Josh saves them on the way back to their house. And so July says that he can stay with them. And so where we're all at now is Jaden is super mistrusting of Josh, and Josh is like just trying to settle in, sort of like being like just there. Oh, nice. This is good. Alright, where was I? Josh sighed and put his... thank you, Ryan. Josh sighed and put his plate away as well. Look, I don't intend on hurting either of you, but... No. Jaden turned to look at him fiercely. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm fine with you staying here, only because July wants you here. The moment you so much as think about hurting him, or Jordan when she gets here... She held a piece of paper out in her hand. Her eyes glowed white and the paper went up in flames, burning until it was nothing more than charcoal dust in her hand. She crushed it and let it fall to the ground like sand. Get the picture? Josh swallowed hard and winced. You can do magic? Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad I could be an inspiration. It's wonderful. It is hard work, though. So, good luck with that. And I'll definitely give you pointers and stuff if you need it. Josh swallowed hard and winced. You can do magic? Obviously. She sighed and looked around. We're going to the village today. We need armor and weapons for the end. She turned to walk down towards the basement. And don't even think about running off. I'll know. Josh looked around worriedly. July must know about this, right? He thought, biting his nails subconsciously. When Jaden came up from the basement with July, Josh attempted to pull him to the side. Hey, have you ever noticed anything strange about Jaden? He asked, looking over July's shoulder at Jaden, who stared daggers back and drew her finger across her throat. Josh flinched again. Not really. Why do you ask? July responded obliviously. Josh shook his head. Never mind. July shrugged. Listen up. We're going to the end. He leaned back and put his hands up. Jaden pushed him back upright gently. Hold on a second, Jelly. We'll probably spend at least all day today trading. July flopped to the ground and sat cross-legged on the floor. He pursed his lips to give a smile in an annoyed tone. But trading is boring and complicated, he whined. Jaden put her hands on her hips and looked down at him strictly. Well, if we don't want to die, we need to do the boring and complicated stuff. How about you and Josh gather food and blocks while I trade? He sighed defeatedly. Okay. He grabbed Josh's hand and led him down the stairs and towards a flock of chickens. Jaden walked off towards the village. Josh took this as a perfect opportunity to tell July about her. So, as I was saying, July shushed him and crept towards the chickens. Josh sighed and put his hand to his head. July, you're vegetarian, he reminded him. I know that. Look! He gestured to a bush just off the side of where the chickens were standing. Sweet berries. He rubbed his hands together and licked his lips. That's weird. Don't they only grow in taiga biomes? Josh inquired. July grinned broader and shook his head. I saw a fox drop them here a few days ago. Alright, what was a fox doing out of a taiga biome? He snapped. July shrugged. Probably a snow fox from the mountains. Then where would it have gotten the berries? July shushed him again and pointed towards the bush. This time, Josh noticed the snow fox cub curled up beneath the brambles. He quieted down, realizing why July had been sneaking. Both boys quietly edged towards the bush so as not to wake the cub. July took out a small leather bag and carefully started to pick the small red berries, wincing whenever he got pricked by the thorns. Josh watched the fox cub sleep and smiled slightly, despite himself. When the bag was full, they both snuck back through the field into the house. As they walked, July started to hum softly. Josh looked at him, a question nagging at him from the back of his brain. Hey, July, how come you're all smiles all the time now? You weren't like that before you left. July froze and his smile faltered. Sorry if it's, uncomfortable or something. Oh god, I think there's a Spider-Man. Oh, never mind, it was just a fly. July froze and his smile faltered. Sorry if it's uncomfortable or something. Josh backtracked. July shook his head and shrugged. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. He paused. I guess traveling with Jaden just got my spirits up, he said, not looking Josh in the eyes. Josh immediately knew he was lying, but he took the hint and left him alone. You lolling about? What did I do? Did I do something funny? Is the thing? Please, I need feedback. When they got back to the house, Jaden greeted them with a smile and 2 full sets of shiny blue armor and swords. July tripped over his feet in his excitement. He caught himself and looked up at Jaden in awe. How did you get full diamond that fast? She smiled and handed him the armor. Armors give good trades if you get enough emeralds. Josh looked at her suspiciously. Where did you get emeralds? If you give sticks to a Fletcher, they give you emeralds. It's basically printing your own money, she answered simply. July quickly slid the chest plate and leggings on over his shorts and t-shirt. No, don't do that to me, please. Can't. Okay. July quickly slid the chest plate and leggings on over his shorts and t-shirt, then sat on the ground to take off his shoes and put on the metal boots. Jaden already had her own set of armor on, so she balanced her sword on the palm of her hand as she waited for the boys to put theirs on. Once they all had their armor on, Jaden stood authoritatively and rested the blade of her sword on her shoulder. Luckily, we won't have to go through the Nether because I already know the location of a lit end portal, she began. How convenient, Josh muttered. Jaden ignored him. That is how I was able to meet her in the first place. I won't forget about it, because that's how I work. I'll never forget about it now. Jerk. I didn't mean it. You're not a jerk. Please don't hate me. Anyway, so I was able to meet her in the first place. She stopped for a second, thinking. She then shook her head and sheathed her sword. Let's go. July sprung up and started to whistle, also sheathing his sword also. Josh finished putting on his armor and followed. Jaden led them across the field opposite the direction from the village and towards the mountains. She made the jumps and scaled the steep slope easily, only stopping to pull July up or mark something down on her map. Josh had difficulty, failing jumps and falling occasionally. When they started to get close to the peak, he ran into powdered snow and sunk in up to his waist. He waited after the other two, shivering violently and cursing under his breath. For what? What did I do? Oh, right, for that, of course. Never mind. He waited after the other two, shivering violently and cursing under his breath. Look alive, Josh! We're almost there! July called cheerily. Josh dug himself out of the snow and looked up. Really? All we did was climb a mountain, and that was about 100 feet away from our house. July laughed and fell back next to Jaden. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I have no idea where we're going. He held Jaden's hand like a child following their parent. Josh growled and walked over to them. Looking out over the plains on the other side of the mountain. Wish we had found this place earlier, Jaden mumbled, marking it on their map. There's no one behind me, Ryan. Stop. No, you streaming all the horror bullshit, and then me having watched Vitacarnus the day before that. I'm already scared enough of it in my own house as it is. Don't be coming here with that shit, man. But, like, again, I do love the horror reaction streams. I think they're amazing. Please never stop doing them. Like, not now anyway, because they're really good, and I enjoy them very much. Wish we had found this place earlier, Jaden mumbled, marking it on her map. How do we get down? Josh asked, tightening the straps on his boots. July spotted a small pool of water at the bottom of the mountain. He smiled and jumped off. Cannonball! He landed in the lake, and a small drop of water shot into the air, making a quiet plop sound when it landed. Jaden laughed and jumped down after him. Her splash was significantly larger than July's. Josh scoffed and started to carefully navigate his way down the mountain. Jaden and July hoisted themselves out of the water and lay down on the grass. July looked over at Jaden subtly. The sun reflected off the water in her hair as she shook it out and made a light rainbow surrounding her. July quickly looked back up at the sky. Good thing we dry off so fast, or we'd be miserable for the rest of the trip, he joked. Jaden chuckled and put her helmet back on. Josh finally got to the ground, his legs and feet badly bruised. He wheezed and panted as he walked towards Jaden and July. July looked up worriedly. You alright, Josh? Yep, he panted. He panted. Took a bit of fall damage, but I'm alright. Could I get some of those berries? July tossed him the bag, and he took some of the small red berries out and ate them. His bruises healed, and he perked up a bit. Thanks, slime boy. He tossed the bag back with a smile. Jaden glared at him. July stood and rested his sword on his shoulder. He looked around and took a deep breath. Jaden and Josh stood beside him. Jaden put her hand on his other shoulder. This is where the real adventure begins. And that's the end of chapter 3. Hey, we're at 65 minutes. How do you guys feel? You know, all good? All cozy? Having a good time? Questions about the lore? Questions about anything you might have missed, Ferox? Gotta do something real quick. Everyone back? Good? Everything good? Everybody good? We good? Alright. Good. Okay. Yeah, sorry for that. Just needed to clear something up real quick. Yeah, no, don't worry about that. That happens when I, like, close out of the thing and then come back in. Just takes a few seconds to get started again. All right. So it's 9:40 here. No. You'll never lose me. I'll always be here. Especially when you least expect it. And that is a threat. So it's 9:40. So I think we can get through chapter 4. Actually, if I read fast, we might be able to get... If I read fast and stop pausing, we might be able to get through the whole thing. Because I've only written 6 chapters. Yeah, I've only written 5.5 chapters, so if I stop pausing and read through it all the way... Oh, you should be. So yeah, I'm gonna read through chapters 4, 5, and 6. No pauses. We'll do a little question segment at the end of the stream if we have time. And then I'm gonna cut it off for tonight. Right? Sound good? Okay. Alright. And please... 5-3. Yeah. Why? Also, please, feel free to give me, feedback on, the story and especially, the voices and sound effects I try to do, because I'm trying to get into voice acting, so feedback on all that will be extremely helpful and very well received. You do not have 5'3" trash cans. I don't believe you. Okay. I don't believe you, Dad. Alright. Josh hacked at the vines with his sword chapter 4. Josh hacked at the vines with his sword as the group trudged through a swamp. Jaden made several noises of disgust as the mud smudged and dulled her boots. July was far ahead of them, whooping. Why did I say that? I don't. You're Canadian. Whatever. Whooping as he swung on vines and ran across roots and treetops. Well, at least he's having fun, Josh growled. Jaden stepped up onto one of the mangrove roots and looked around. We should be near an ocean. Just about a half-day's boat ride from the shore will bring us straight to the stronghold. We've been traveling for days, Josh groaned. I'm starving. There should be fish in one of these rivers, Jaden muttered, squinting down into the muddy water. Josh looked up to see the sun setting inside. Great. Now we have to deal with phantoms and slimes. They heard July gasp and quickly turn in his direction. Guys, come look what I found! He shouted over his shoulder. Jaden rushed over to him as Josh waded towards the tree to pull himself out of the mud. Sure. Pulled himself out of the mud. They came across a small pool of water with a fishing line cast into it. They looked up at the way it was leading from and saw that July had stuck it to a root with slime in an attempt to fish without doing the work himself. Sorry. They looked up the way it was leading from and saw that July had stuck it to a root with slime in an attempt to fish without doing the work himself. Jaden sighed and shook her head, then looked around. She spotted July crouching in the mud a few blocks away and went over to him. Are you all right? What did you want us to see? She kneeled down on a root next to him. Josh walked over to her and leaned on a separate tree. July stood and turned around, holding out his hands with a small orange frog in them. Frog! He said happily. He pressed his face against his wrists and looked down at the frog, crossing his eyes. Jaden smiled and shook her head again. You're such a child sometimes. She ruffled his hair affectionately. July set the frog down and looked in his bag. I also made a boat out of the mangrove wood. Did you find the ocean? Jaden asked. He nodded and pointed to the south of them. Josh quickly crafted a second boat, and the three of them walked towards the water, Jaden praising July the entire way. When they got to the edge of the water, it was completely dark. July and Josh hastily put their boats in the water as slime squished and bounced towards them. Jaden stepped into the boat precariously, knocking aside an airborne trident with her axe. She grabbed the oars tightly, and as soon as July got in, she sped away, zipping past the drowned as quickly as possible. Josh followed in his own boat, only stopping to daringly loot a shipwreck or ruined portal under the water. Phantoms swarmed above their heads, but never dared to swoop down for fear of being impaled by a trident. July laid on his back tiredly and shot at them with his bow. Once they came upon a shallow spot in the water, Jaden quickly took out her bed and stopped the boat to put it down in the water. July looked around to make sure no mobs were close to them, then followed suit. Josh stopped beside them, but stayed in his boat. "Are you two insane? We have to get out of here," he shouted insistently. Jaden shook her head. "It's too dangerous to keep going. This will clear out the mobs." She laid down and closed her eyes, and a smoky, translucent shield formed around her in the bed. July shrugged and flopped down into his own bed. "I'd trust her judgment," he suggested, giving Josh a meaningful look before falling asleep as well. Josh looked back towards the onslaught of monsters slowly making their way towards the group and sighed defeatedly. He placed down his own bed and laid down as well, yet found himself slightly less comfortable than the other two, for some reason. The monsters finally managed to catch up to them, but couldn't break through the magic barriers surrounding them. This calmed Josh down slightly and allowed him to drift off to sleep as well. Stuffy. Stuffed. Sick face. Okay. When they woke up the next morning, the monsters and boats had disappeared. Josh was the first to wake up. He noticed that the boats were gone and swore quietly before breaking Jaden and July's beds to wake him up. Jaden pushed her sopping wet hair out of her face and glared at him. "Well, good morning to you too," she grumbled, wringing her clothes out and standing in the water. What? What do you do? What was that for? July sat up and burrowed into the sand under the water like a child at the beach. "So, what's now?" Jaden pulled him up out of the sand, revealing a dark, rotted-looking trapdoor. "I stopped here last night because I knew you were here," she explained. She opened the trapdoor to a hole that appeared to go almost all the way to bedrock. Strangely, no water flowed past the trapdoor. Jaden stood on the edge of the hole. "We need to go down one at a time. There's water at the bottom, so it's perfectly safe." "What are you doing?" "Oh, it's cute. Little cats in a box. I love the cats in a box. But I don't understand the reason for them." She reassured them before jumping into it. Both boys looked after her, crossing their fingers. "Good! I'm glad you're having fun." The other guy left. I'm glad you're having fun. They heard her call back up to them faintly and sighed with relief. "Guess it's safe then," July said matter-of-factly. He straightened up and jumped down as well. Josh stood there for a while, thinking. Eventually he sighed, braced himself, and jumped down. He heard the trapdoor creak shut behind him as he fell. The gray monotony of the stone surrounding him as he fell was broken only by flashes of other whitish or reddish stones and shining different colored ore. He eventually landed in a shallow pool of water, which broke his fall. He stood, slightly dazed, and looked around the new room. The room was fairly well lit with torches, and bookshelves were stacked in tight rows, filling in the otherwise empty space. It looked abandoned as some of the books were molding and dusty, and moss had started to grow through cracks in the stone brick floor and walls. But there was an odd lack of cobwebs. There were a few chests in and on top of the bookshelves. bookshelves. But when Josh checked them, he found that they were empty, except for a loose piece of string and some gunpowder. Jaden looked out over the railing of the top floor of the library, which was simply a narrow wooden pathway lining the walls embedded with bookshelves. Oh, good. Finally decided to join us. She jumped down and landed on her feet. She winced slightly, but seemed otherwise unscathed. The portal room is right next to this one. July's in there dealing with the silverfish. Silverfish? Tiny bug-like mobs that live in the stone bricks. Josh shuddered slightly as they both went into the portal room. The second thing Josh noticed when they walked in was how blatantly different this room was from the Stronghold library. For one thing, the portal room was stiflingly hot because there were two small pools of lava on either side of the door and one much larger pool in the center. The pool in the center of the room was blocked from view from the front by a large stone brick staircase leading up to a yellowish portal frame. The portal frame was made up of 12 smaller frames, each occupied by a small, dark teal eye with a slitted pupil. The portal itself was an inky black sheet with specks of green, blue, purple, and yellow floating around in it. The first thing that Josh noticed was that July was perched atop a short, dirt-like pillar surrounded by silverfish. Hey guys! Please help. He sat up and looked at them shakily. Jaden sighed, disappointed. July, did you hit the bugs? Yeah. He curled up on top of his pillar. Jaden sighed again and poured lava around the base of the pillar to get rid of the silverfish. I told you, if you hit them, more of them spawn. I swear, you're helpless sometimes. July looked away and jumped down from the pillar once Jaden blocked off the lava. Your armor has mending. Go kill some skeletons or something. She pat his shoulder gently. Chin up, Jelly. He nodded and picked himself up slightly. He drew his sword and walked out. Jaden turned to Josh. All right. Yeah. I just love the image of like this like God, how old was July again? Just this 18-year-old kid just like curled up on top of a pillar surrounded by a bunch of tiny bugs. Alright, so we're going to put everything important that we don't need in this chest so that it doesn't weigh us down. Right. Josh thought for a moment, then put everything in the chest except his sword, bow, arrows, armor, and food. And a stack of cobblestone. Fun image, yeah. July walked back in, his armor and tools seeming to be in much better shape, and did the same. Jaden followed suit, then took a deep breath to settle her suddenly racing heart. She walked up the steps and looked into the portal. July walked up behind her and put his hand on her shoulder. I'm sure she's okay, he reassured her. She nodded and took another breath, standing on the edge of the portal frame. All right, let's go. All right, we got a good amount of time left. I'm just skipping the talking segment, but if you guys have questions, you can still put them in. Chapter 5. Actually, hang on, I need to take a quick break before we get into Chapter 5. Discuss amongst yourselves. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. Sorry that took so long. There was a roach in the place I was trying to go, and he freaked me out. 57. God, is it taking me an hour to read each chapter? Please tell me it's not taking me an hour to read each chapter. It's not. We're only 83 minutes in. Did you seriously? You just sang Sound of Silence. Okay. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Because a vision softly creeping lifted seats while I was sleeping. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. I'm trying to find game a good notice more. Alright, anyway, sorry about that. I had to, it was good. I just, it's a good song, okay? I've never actually listened to it. Anyway, that's not what you guys are here for. Chapter 5. The group fell into the portal. After floating through an inky black void for a few seconds, they landed softly on solid ground. Oh, thank you. July stumbled slightly. Whoa! How did you ever get used to that? He asked, looking around. I didn't, Jaden responded, picking herself up off the ground. She looked around as well. The ground was very hard. The ground was very hard and uneven. I can't read my own handwriting. And made of a strange yellowish stone. The sky looked like the portal itself, a black sheet dotted with small colored specks. The land was completely bare. Oh, no. I lost my place. The land was completely barren and abandoned, except for a small, spread out crowd of tall, thin figures as black as the sky. Small purple particles floated down by the figure's legs, and sometimes a figure would appear or disappear in a flash of the same color. Jaden instinctively looked at the ground as July and Josh drew their swords. She put a hand up to stop them. Don't worry, they're passive. Just don't look them in the eyes and they won't attack. The boys nodded and put away their swords as they looked down. This doesn't make any sense, Jaden muttered. We should be on the main island. And what happened to all the chorus plants? She quickly looked around again, then back down. At least the cities are still here. Suddenly, a deafening roar was heard from the sky. Jaden covered her eyes with her arm and drew her axe. The boys followed suit. What was that? Josh asked, putting a thin piece of cloth over his eyes and backing away. The tall figures started teleporting frantically, scattering purple particles everywhere. Was it? You guys. You flatter me. You flatter me. Like, honestly, I don't... Why? Why? Why are you praising me? What are you praising me for? I don't understand. Help. I need to go check something. I'll be back in, like, literally 5 seconds. Alright, I'm back. That was literally 5 seconds. I counted in my head. Anyway. What was that? Josh asked, putting a thin piece of cloth over his eyes and backing away. The tall figure started teleporting frantically, scattering purple particles everywhere. As if to answer Josh's question, the beast flew just a few blocks above their heads. It swooped upwards and spread its shadowy wings against the sky. The dragon seemed to be almost 20 times the size of each person in the group, and was only visible because it was an even darker shade of black than the sky, and had bright, glowing purple eyes. As it dove towards them, it also revealed 3 rows of dark gray spikes along its back, tail, and each of its wings. It roared again, and a bright purple fireball shot from its mouth. July dove out of the way and barely dodged it. It exploded right next to him, erupting in a cloud of purple smoke that burned his skin. Jaden jumped back and substituted her axe for a shield. Stay out of those clouds, she instructed. July backed out of the mist, massaging his burnt arm. Don't have to tell me twice. Josh pulled out a bow and arrow and tried to line up a clear shot on the dragon. Just before he released the arrow, Jaden knocked the bow to the side, causing the arrow to barely miss the dragon. Josh turned to her angrily. What was that for? We can't hurt the dragon. It guards and leads this land, she explained. July came up behind them, recovering from another burn. Guys. Sorry. Thank you. I don't know how to process praise, man. But like I live for it. I love praise and it like feels nice when I have it, but I don't know how to respond to it. Anyway, the dragon flew up into the air, then turned and started barreling towards them, fangs bared. They all shut their eyes and put up their shields, bracing themselves for the impact. But it never came. What did come around was a loud, odd sound, a sort of commanding tone in a cross between a hiss and a distorted scream. The dragon stopped in midair, then landed on the ground and laid down like a dog who had gotten in trouble. The group put their shields down and looked at it in disbelief. Before them, standing in front of the dragon with her back turned to them, was a girl, a full block taller than them, wearing black boots and a long white coat like a scientist. Her long curly black hair was tied up behind her head and just barely grazed the ground. Which had a strip of black fabric tying it up. The dragon's eyes glowed orange as she looked at it, and it turned and flew away. When the dragon was gone, the girl turned towards the group. She looked like one of the dark figures, only somehow more humanoid. She had orange highlights in her hair, as well as a black, diamond-patterned blindfold over her eyes. Her coat was unbuttoned to show an orange undershirt and neat blue jeans. She started to speak to them in a language that sounded like high-pitched, heavily distorted English, with a sort of chirp sound behind each word. She finished speaking and looked at them expectantly. We're not from here? July clarified, confused. Oh, you're from the overworld, she stated, taking on a slightly kinder demeanor. How did you get here? I thought all the portals were closed. Josh finally got over his shock from the dragon. Hey, we should be the ones asking the questions. Who are you? Where did that thing come from? How'd you make the dragon do that? What were these weird creature things? The girl turned to him, seeming to only have noticed he was there when he started speaking. She sighed and in a frustrated yet calm tone stated, My name is Jordan. I live here in the End City just over there. She pointed to a large purple and yellowish tower. Secondly, that's none of your business. Thirdly, those are Endarians, or Endermen, as the overworld dwellers say. She whistled and the Endermen stopped teleporting. They started to walk around much more calmly. July perked up slightly. You're Jordan? We came here looking for you. Jordan turned to him and raised an eyebrow. Jaden frantically gestured for July to stop speaking. A quiet, distorted growl began to echo around them. For what purpose? Jordan asked skeptically. Oh, well, Jaden said that you were stuck here and she wanted to help you get out, July said happily. Jaden tensed and put her hands over her face in defeat. The growl quieted and faded, and Jordan stood in shock. Jaden? Is she here? She looked around and Jaden sighed. I'm here. Jordan spun around to face her. The two stared at each other for a while before Jordan finally spoke. I know why. Jaden started to tremble and tears filled her eyes. She rushed to Jordan and hugged her tightly. I missed you so much. I'm so sorry, she mumbled, trying to hold herself together. Jordan smiled softly and hugged her back. It's all right. I know why you had to leave. No, I should have stayed. I should have taken you with me. I should have. Jordan let go of her and kneeled down to get to her height. She put both of her hands on her shoulders. Jaden, it's okay. I'm not mad or even upset at you. I'm so happy to see you again, and I would love to go back to the overworld with you. Jaden took a deep breath and nodded, wiping her eyes. Jordan hugged her again, then stood and turned to the boys. There's no way to get back to the overworld from here. We'll have to go to the main island. Jaden looked up as well.
I wanted to ask you about that. How come the portal brought us here? And how come the dragon was all the way out here?
I'm not sure. A lot of strange things have been happening recently. All the shulkers are gone from the cities. The chorus plants have been dying rapidly. The ships have been falling from the skies. Jordan replied, her brow furrowing. It was hard to switch between all the voices. Now that I think about it, I've seen some weird stuff going on in the overworld too. Josh intervened. Mobs in the wrong biomes. Way more hostile mobs spawning. Entire forests filled with leafless trees. He trailed off. He remembered his conversation with Jaden and slowly looked up at her, gradually putting the pieces together. Jaden side-eyed him and shook her head slightly. He stayed silent, but continued to ponder over his theory. Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it won't be too much of a problem to deal with, July said, still looking up at Jordan with a question burning at the back of his brain. Well, for now, we should focus on getting back to the overworld, Jordan said, looking around. She spoke again in the odd language, and one of the Andarians turned to look at her. They talked back and forth for a bit before Jordan turned back to the others. The island should be at coordinates -100, 49, 0. How far are we, Jaden? Jaden took out another map, this one almost entirely black, but with a few large yellowish splotches. Shouldn't be too far. We just need to get across the void. Jordan nodded and started to walk towards the end city that she lived in. I have a few spare pairs of elytra in my home. She beckoned for them to follow her. July and Josh both wrapped the thin cloth around their eyes again. Jaden didn't follow suit, but was very careful with what she put her eyes on. They all followed Jordan to the end city. July couldn't contain himself any longer, and he pulled on Jordan's sleeve to get her attention. Hey, Jordan, how come you wear that blindfold instead of something you'd see through? Jordan thought for a moment, then shook her head. It's just a safety precaution, she explained simply. July nodded and fell back next to Jaden. The group got to the base of a large tower-like structure with staircases leading away from the center and branching out to other rooms, stacking higher and higher into the inky black sky. July and Josh looked at it in awe. You live here? Josh marveled, admiring the purple glass and frame around the yellowy white brick walls. I do. Jordan said a few words in Andarian and stepped inside. I'll get the elytra for you. I also put full enchants on a set of diamond armor if you'd like it. July perked up excitedly, taking the cloth off his eyes. Yes, please! Jordan smiled softly and went up one of the adjoining staircases. Josh looked around the room they were in. There was a brewing stand in one corner with potions bubbling softly in it. In the other corner was a small space with walls of bookshelves. There was a table in the center of the smaller room with an open book floating above it. The table itself seemed to be made of obsidian, with diamonds padding the top corners and holding down a red silk sheet. An anvil and a grindstone sat beside the table. 3 purple staircases led out of the room from each of the walls aside from the entrance, and one staircase spiraled in the center of the room, going up to another level of the tower. Jaden sat down against a wall, thinking. July noticed and sat next to her. Everything all right, Blue Jay? Yeah, it's so weird seeing her again. I thought she'd hate me. I told you she wouldn't. Well, yeah, but Come on, just be happy that she's okay and she's coming back with us. July stood and offered Jaden's hand. She took it and stood as well. Yeah, you're right. Jaden came back in a few moments later, holding 4 pairs of what looked like large gray wings, along with a shining set of diamond armor that was radiating with magic. I won't need any armor, so you 3 can split it whatever way you want. The chest plate won't be of much use, though. Ooh, I called dibs on the boots, July exclaimed, eager to get back to the overworld. Jaden watched him and smiled softly. Jordan handed the boots to July, who immediately sat down to replace his old ones with them. Josh shrugged and stepped forward. I'll take the pants, I guess. Jaden scoffed. They're not pants, Josh. They go over your pants. Please tell me you've been wearing normal pants under those. They were really expensive. Josh rolled his eyes and took the enchanted pair. Obviously, I know that. But what else am I supposed to call them? Do you 2 always bicker this much, or is it only because there are valuables involved? Jordan interjected. Jaden took the enchanted helmet and looked away. Well, I've only known him for like 2.5 days. Jordan raised her eyebrows at Jaden, who shrugged and took a set of wings to replace her chest plate. He's only here because July likes him, she clarified. Ah, I see. Jordan handed the boys each a pair of wings before fastening her own to her back. Do you 2 know how to use an elytra? She asked the boys. Yeah. Well, no. No, not really. July mumbled, ashamed. That's all right. We can show you. We should be able to get back to the main island from the roof of my tower if we tower up a bit. Jordan said over her shoulder, straightening Jaden's elytra and tightening it. She stepped back and started to gather her things. After clearing out the room, she paused and started muttering to herself in Andarian, seemingly going over some sort of list. When she finished, she turned back to the others. All right, is everyone ready? Jaden finished tightening July's elytra and nodded. Try saying July's elytra 3 times fast. All good here. Josh started to tighten his own and leaned against the wall. Okay then, follow me. Jordan beckoned them towards her and started to climb up the central spiral staircase. The others followed her up, becoming slightly dizzy as they went higher. The staircase twisted up higher and higher in what felt like an endless spiral until they came to an opening in the ceiling. Jordan came out onto the roof and looked over the empty, yet strangely beautiful void. Josh and Jaden emerged shortly afterwards and collapsed onto the bricks, gasping for breath. I hate stairs, Jaden panted. Josh turned over and groaned. Finally, something we can agree on. July came out last, a few minutes later, his arms and legs shaking, practically dragging himself out of the stairway. I'm okay, he called weakly. Jordan turned and watched them recover, crossing her arms, shaking her head, and clicking her tongue. You 3 don't get enough exercise. If exercise means climbing up 12 flights of stairs, then yeah, I guess we don't, Josh retorted. Right? That's what I put it in. Well, there's no need to be sarcastic, Jordan muttered, turning back to the void. Jaden regained herself first and picked July up by the back of his shirt. So, can we just go from here, or do we need to tower up? She asked Jordan. I think we should tower up at least 30 or so blocks just to be safe, she responded, passing a stack of the same yellowish-white stone to each person. Once we get up there, I'll grab onto Josh, and Jaden will help July. Whoa. Why do we need help with this? Josh asked, standing up. The quiet, distorted growl started again, and Jordan took a deep breath and slowly turned towards Josh. If you'd rather flail around like an idiot and face a slow, painful death suffering in the void, be my guest. She smiled at him passive-aggressively and turned back to start towering up. July snickered and nudged Jaden to get her attention. Living with these 2 is going to be fun, he muttered, grinning. Jaden smiled and nodded before starting to build upwards with the yellowish stone. Josh stared at Jordan, processing her audacity.
Eventually, he regained himself and started to build up after Jaden, muttering to himself. The four of them towered up to the same level, and Jaden grabbed July's hand. "Don't get too far away from me, and you'll be fine," she said, checking his elytra again. "You don't have to worry about me so much, Blue Jay. I'll be fine," he reassured her, rocking back and forth on his heels. "Who, me? Worried? No way," she scoffed unconvincingly. Jordan tossed Jaden a stack of red and white striped fireworks. "I'm going to be underneath you two for the most part, because I need to distribute more of my weight to the front of my body since I'm taller than all of you. Only use the rockets if you start sinking towards me to give yourself some extra height." Jaden nodded and put the fireworks in her bag. "Got it." Jordan grabbed Josh by the back of his shirt as Jaden tied July's hand to hers. Josh grumbled quietly but didn't say anything. Jordan looked around one more time before taking a deep breath and jumping off the end stone pillar. And that's chapters 4 and 5 done. 10:17. We got a good amount of time to do chapter 6. I haven't actually finished chapter 6. It's only like 3 3/4 pages, so I think we can take a little break to discuss the last 2 chapters if you guys want to. Anything? Are you guys still awake? Because I don't. Oh yeah, I know you are. You have trouble using what? Are you using elytra? No, because we haven't gotten to that part yet. You're just listening. Okay. Well, did you have any questions or feedback about chapters 4 and 5? Trying to stay awake again? Yeah. Oh, you do. You do. Okay, hang on. What do you got? Also, sorry I'm keeping you up again. I don't mean to keep you up this much. Oh, it's just the first draft. Do you want to know the characters' backstory? Actually, I don't think we have time for the characters' backstories, but we might. Yeah, Elytra, yeah. I guess it's spelled with a Y or something. But anyway, yeah, so I'll read over chapter 6 and then cut off the stream, and if you want to get into a call afterwards and not okay. And if you want to get into a call afterwards and discuss this, because this is the story that I actually wanted you to help me with the voice acting on. For James, who hasn't been introduced yet. But if you want to get on a call after this, if you're not too tired, because again I don't want to keep you up more than I should. We can discuss backstories and personalities and stuff. And that'd be really fun. Or I can just type out a quick infographic for you and post it on the Discord. Whatever's easiest for you. Now. Anyway, chapter 6. Sorry if you hear rumbling and stuff. There's stuff going on. Chapter 6. I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'll just type up the thing for you. Yeah, okay, so chapter 6. Jordan stared at one of the maps as they flew, trying to keep track of their coordinates. Josh managed to stay upright for most of the journey, only faltering a few times. Jaden and July, on the other hand, were struggling. Not only was Jaden trying to keep track of their altitude, she also had to hold up July,
who was failing miserably to fly in a straight line. Alright, yeah, okay, that's fair. Wait, sorry, no, I have to edit that. Right, so for you it's like 11. Ooh, sorry. I really should have started this earlier, but I knew I had like chores and stuff, so I didn't want to like... Anyway, yeah. So Jordan stared in a straight line as they flew. Yeah. And Josh managed to stay upright for most of the journey, only faltering a few times. Jaden and July, on the other hand, were struggling. Not only was Jaden trying to keep track of their altitude and coordinates, she also had to hold up July, who was failing miserably to fly in a straight line. The only thing that kept him from falling and crashing into Jordan and Josh multiple times was the bundle of hastily tied knots keeping him and Jaden connected. Jaden grumbled and used a rocket to help her pull July up. Just stop moving! It's easier to fly if you're not flailing around. She pulled July back up to her side and tried to keep him still. He kept his arms out but managed to steady himself for the most part. He continued to sway slightly, but Jaden found it much easier to control how they moved. There, see? Much better. We're almost there. I can sense the edge of the main island, Jordan called up to them. Jaden put away her map and leaned forward. Roger that. She cut the rope connecting her to July once they were over the land. She and Jordan both swooped upwards slightly and landed gracefully on their feet. Josh stumbled a bit on the landing, but was quickly able to find his footing. July face-planted into the hard stone ground with his arms outstretched. Jaden helped him up and gave him a loaf of bread. He had a small cut on his face and seemed a bit dazed, but was otherwise completely fine. Jaden shook her head and stood as July healed himself. She looked around to see that the main island was the first thing in the end to still look normal. A large, misshapen circular island floating effortlessly over the void, with 8 giant obsidian pillars surrounding a much smaller pillar of bedrock in the center. The bedrock pillar was about 4 blocks tall and had a circular base of bedrock that sank about a block into the ground. Jordan sighed defeatedly, just as I thought. The portal isn't lit. Josh looked up at her in disbelief. You mean we came all the way out here for nothing? Calm yourself. We can still get back to the overworld, she said, irritated at Josh's insolence. They began to bicker loudly as the distorted growl started again. July, bored, decided to start climbing one of the obsidian pillars. Jaden thought for a moment before casually walking up to the bedrock pillar, trying not to attract the attention of the others. She looked back at them before putting her hand on the side of the pillar. Her eyes and the palm of her hand glowed white, and the base of the pillar filled with an inky blackness. She quickly stepped out of the base as colored specks filled the blackness and the portal activated. She smiled triumphantly and turned back to the others. Hey, you guys coming? They all turned towards her, shocked. The distorted growl subsided, and Jordan smiled knowingly. She crossed her arms and walked up beside Jaden. You still got it, she muttered, just loud enough for Jaden to hear. Do they know? Josh knows. July doesn't, Jaden mumbled back. Jordan raised her eyebrows at her. He only knows because I threatened him, she clarified. Jordan nodded understandingly. July bounded up next to them, closely followed by Josh. Whoa, how did you get it to work, Blue Jay? July inquired, looking up at Jaden in awe. Jaden shrugged. What is it? Yeah, pretty much. Jaden shrugged. Just a bit of elbow grease, that's all. Josh glared at her, suspicious. She turned to Jordan. So, where are you going to end up in the overworld? We'll come find you. Jordan shook her head. No need to make you travel anymore. Just send me your coordinates once we're up there. She handed Jaden a quill, a piece of parchment, and an ender chest. Jaden looked up at her, her brow furrowing. Are you sure you'll be alright traveling on your own? I know it's been a long time since you've seen the overworld. Jordan smiled softly and put a hand on Jaden's shoulder. You don't have to worry about me, she said softly, kneeling down to close their height difference. I've learned quite
quite a bit in my time here. I'll be fine in the overworld. Jaden took a shaky breath and nodded. She turned to face the two boys. Josh was trying to balance his sword in the palm of his hand, trying and failing to hide the fact that he had been listening to the girls' conversation. And July was attempting to scale the smooth, jagged obsidian pillars again. Jaden whistled and cocked her head towards the portal. July turned to look at her before jumping down obediently and strolling over to her, ignoring the jolt of pain in both his ankles. Jaden tutted and tossed July another loaf of bread, which he gratefully accepted. Josh, on the other hand, was not amused. Who do you think you are? You really think I would... If you want to stay here, you're welcome to. Jaden cut him off coolly. Josh opened his mouth to argue back, but thought better of it and resigned to shoving his hands in his pockets and mumbling under his breath as he walked towards the portal. July jumped into the portal first, grabbing Josh by the front of his hoodie and pulling him in after him. Jaden looked back at Jordan one more time with a smile. See you soon. Jaden sat up in her bed, blinking sunlight out of her eyes. Josh had already left the room, leaving Jaden and July alone to put their things away. Jaden stood and stretched before taking off her armor and hanging on the armor stand beside the door. We can go back to the stronghold to get our stuff later on, after Jordan gets here and settles in. July sat on the end of his own bed and watched her curiously. So, how's she gonna know how to get here? The ender chest she gave me works as a type of item teleportation system. So when I write our coordinates on a paper and put it in the ender chest, it'll show up in hers and she'll be able to find us. July nodded slowly and looked out the window. How long do you think it'll take her to get here? Jaden looked up from the chest beside her bed and over her shoulder towards the window. Shouldn't be too long. She travels quickly. I imagine she'll be here in a few minutes. She looked around the hallway-like room and sighed. We're not going to have enough room, are we? Well, we don't all have to sleep in the same room. There's not enough space in here to separate the rooms, and there's nowhere in the house to build other rooms. July curled his knees to his chest, thinking. Jaden shook her head and leaned on the wall, facing the window. Suddenly, she perked up excitedly. She's here! And that is all I have written of Chapter 6 and of the entire story. So, that's all I got. Any questions, comments, concerns, theories? Oh my god, if you guys made up fan theories about it, I would be so happy. That would make me the happiest person ever.
Yes, this thing
became a whole thing. Yeah! Yippee!
Oh, 10:30, perfect.
You're 10:29, but no, yeah, now it's 10:30. Well, that worked out. All right. So yeah, but totally. If you guys like come up with like theories and like fan stories, if someone wrote fan fiction about my story, I think that would be like the ultimate rite of passage for me. I think that's the ultimate rite of passage for any story writer, is if their original story gets like a fan base around it. So yeah, so like any sort of like feedback like of like the story or like the voices, like the personalities of the characters, like something. Give me something. Jaden has the same sickness Josh has theory. Okay, interesting theory. I, for the fun of it, I won't tell you whether you're right or wrong. But like as the story, because I don't want to like give away anything or like cut down your chutzpah. So I'm not going to tell you whether your theories are right or wrong. If you would share this with the guys, I would love that. But like, of course you don't have to. I don't like this is your fan base. I don't want to make it about my story, obviously. But anyway,
that's just about all the time I got for tonight. 118 minutes. Not bad. Not bad. So what? It takes just a little under 2 hours to read the entire story out loud? That doesn't seem right. I get from recording DDLC for a while. It's really difficult to move voices. Oh, thank you. Thank you. The voices are a work in progress. I gotta like, I'm kind of working. I'm working hard on trying to make those good. Oh, speaking of theater and acting, I auditioned for One Acts today, so we'll find out either next week or on Friday whether I got in again or not. So that'll be fun. So yeah. Anyway, oh, good. Yes. And then I'll quickly do my chore, and then I'll come back up. I'll write out that sort of synopsis for you, and I think we'll be good as gold. Good as gold. Good as gold. Wait a minute. No. I'm thinking of both the saying "will be golden" and the saying "right as rain." So had good as gold. It's not. Whatever. My brain hasn't been working these past few days. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, Ryan. Thanks for listening to my bullshit and hearing me out. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow. Yep. All right. Yeah. Go catch those Z's. Catch those Z's. All right. And then I'm gonna try to stream. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to stream again this weekend. You might have to remind me. All right. Have a good night. Have a good sleep. Bye bye.